We don't talk about bikes at our house. We don't say, oh, bikes are good. We have to ride our bike today to save the planet. No, we just ride our bikes. We just do it. We don't talk about it. It's just a part of the life. It's like, throwing out the garbage, and it's just what you do. So when he saw this bike, I was a bit surprised. He saw it and he just said, Daddy, that is a cool bike. I have to have this bike, must have. So I got the bike for him. But I thought it was interesting that he reacted to the design, this vintage design of this bike. He was seduced by it. And he has a lot of street cred on this bike riding around Copenhagen, where we've seen everything in bikes. Young kids, smaller kids, kids his own age, and grown-ups. You can't ride around the city with him on this bike and people are going, cool bike, cool bike. So all day long he's given this status, like I'm on a cool bike, which is not normal in Copenhagen because it's such an ordinary thing. But he's enjoying that bike very much. This also is a symbol, I think, of the emerging market of the bicycle industry. I really think that a lot of the bicycle industry has missed the point completely. The hottest bike on the planet at the moment is anything old, anything you can find on eBay, anything you can find in your grandmother's summer house. You see it everywhere, even in Copenhagen. The prices of vintage bikes are booming, and I really think this is the 99%, all these people returning to the bicycle, reacting to the bicycle industry, who has kind of overcomplicated it with models that regular people don't want. People just want cool vintage bikes. So whoever's gonna corner that market is gonna make a hell of a lot more money than everybody else. The good design can be seductive as well. This isn't the best moment to be riding on the cycle tracks of Copenhagen. Nevertheless, the citizens are seduced by the design to do so. 80% of Copenhageners cycle all winter. These people know that the infrastructure will still work for them, even though it's not in perfect condition, but they also know that the city will be by within the hour during this snowstorm, and that the snow will be cleared from the cycle tracks before it's cleared from the roads. If you design beautiful, functional things, you have to take good care of them. Good design can also improve human behavior, nothing less. I'm sure most people in this room have heard the same thing. Maybe many of you have even thought the same thing. Oh, those damn cyclists, bloody cyclists, breaking the law, running red lights, shaking the very foundations of our society with their horrible behavior. Whenever I hear that, I just say, no. Listen, these cyclists have probably not been given adequate bicycle infrastructure. Even worse, none at all. Never mind the fact that cyclists are forced to abide by a traffic culture and traffic laws engineered to serve the automobile 100 years ago, a completely different form of transport. I've cycled in over 50 cities around the world with my work, and I can tell you that in Copenhagen we have the world's best behaved cyclists. Regular citizens in any society don't want to go about their day breaking laws. The 99% just want to live a normal, kind of boring life. They just want to go from A to B conveniently and safely. And with good designed infrastructure like we have in Copenhagen, they'll do the right thing. You'll see 100, 200, 300 people in the morning rush hour sitting there waiting for the lights to change, because they have a network of well-designed infrastructure. Design is also a multifaceted tool. Just thinking in design terms can help you cut through the bone in understanding many of the issues that we deal with. This is a graphic that we worked up at Copenhagenized. Thinking in design terms makes you produce things like this. A short history of traffic engineering. It's kind of for fun, but it's also incredibly appropriate to our cities now. 7,000 years of rationality, and then you can see where we ended up at the very end of it there. Or how about this one? How do you sum up in one single most effective route to behavior change in cities? That's it right there. It doesn't get much more simple than that. If you make the bicycle the fastest way from A to B, people will ride bicycles. That's why they ride them in Copenhagen and Amsterdam, because it's fast and convenient. If you want motorists to switch their modes of transport, the most difficult job in the world for those of us who are working with this, you simply make it a pain in the ass to drive a car. That's it, and that's that. We also have a strong design tradition, of course, in Denmark. My son had his first design class in the 3rd grade. But it's interesting to consider how this has perhaps influenced the Danish bicycle infrastructure network, the best practice that we have established. Here are the 4 types of bicycle infrastructure in the country, and there are basically only 4. Simple, effective, proven, safe, and easy for wayfinding. Design can help. So basically we have human observation, direct human observation, and using basic design principles. These are a way forward for modernizing and revitalizing our tired, car-centric cities. Well, now we're talking about design. So you have the whole big picture in designing for bicycles and pedestrian, but I like to present these micro design details that I have discovered in a lot of the cities that I travel to. You can see the one on the left. This is a little desire line. This is an example also how they think in Copenhagen. You have to, on the top left, you have to ride 100 meters farther down and then turn around to get to the harbor front. Some person on a bike said, I can just go down here. I can just go down here. The next person saw the little track, and so it continued. And then there was a man-made ramp there. And the city of Copenhagen goes in saying, oh, for God's sakes. And they'll put in a ramp to accommodate these people. On the bottom left is a manhole, right? I'm not an expert in manholes, but I know that manholes are usually flat. But on this new street in the University District, somebody angled the manhole up to the curb so that cyclists could get up to the bike racks. Somebody, I don't know who it is, I've actually been looking for this person in the whole hierarchy of the city of Copenhagen. Was it the designer or the architect on the street, or was it this big huge guy with overalls and a big stomach called Jens, who's like in charge of putting in all the, make a ramp for these people, you know? And this guy Jens probably rode his bike to work that day. I really want it to be Jens instead of some architect in a bureau. I want it to be, you know, grassroots. But it's another example of creating a desire line. Then there's this ramp in this backyard in Copenhagen. It's just offices there. There's no residential flats. And there's a little curb, and I've been up and down that curb. It's not a big curb, so people would just hop up the curb and park. And somebody in the middle of the night put in this ramp. And I've asked all these offices. Nobody knows whose it was. Some guy who works there or lives in the neighborhood said, we need a ramp there. So, and I sat there one morning watching everybody come to work, you know, coming into the backyard, and every single one would come flying through the backyard and aim for this little ramp. Completely irrelevant detail, but it's micro designed by the people for the people, and I really like that shit. In Copenhagen, we have, maybe some of you have seen the footrests and railings on the left that the city of Copenhagen has put in on 18 different locations, so they can make it a little more enjoyable to wait at the red light for all of the citizen cyclists. On the footrest on the left, it says, "Hi cyclists, rest your foot here and thank you for cycling in the city." We just think it's a good idea to thank people who ride bicycles in cities instead of, like, you know, banging all sorts of eco drums and stuff. You know what? You ride a bike, you're cool. Thanks for that. That's great. We also experimented with some prototypes on the right there with my company. We put up these handles on the bottom right. We call them the Copenhagenites love handles on posts by stop signs, by the stop line for bikes. And we filmed it for an entire week. You can Google that, Copenhagenites love handles. And it was really interesting to see all these commuters in the morning didn't even notice this green thing sticking out. And then on the next day, some of them started reading this little sticker that we had. What the hell is that? And then by the third day, people are just grabbing onto it. It was like a battle to get to the love handle. And the greatest thing we didn't even anticipate was that they started to propel themselves into motion by using the handle. So they'd hold it, and then they would get themselves going again. Great little human interaction. We also made garbage cans or rubbish bins for cyclists. And we didn't document this because it's really kind of boring to stand there all day next to a garbage can. But we saw what kind of garbage people were throwing out, and it's the same thing that everybody else, you know, coffee cups, cigarette packs, banana peels, apple cores, everything like that. So it was also a big success. I'd like you to consider this metaphor. Lego is Danish, so I have to say Lego is great, obviously. I think it's in the Constitution that we have to sell Lego at every, right, Leslie? Yeah. But, you know, I have 16 kilograms of Lego at my house. My childhood Lego and all my kids' Lego. And the thing is, you know, Lego, when you buy a set of Lego, you have to follow these instructions. It's like going to IKEA. It's the same kind of IKEA experience. A little less frustrating maybe than IKEA, but you have to, you know, follow this massive book of instructions to build that Millennium Falcon. And it takes days of construction. You know, your kids are gone after 4 hours and you're left there building it for them. And at the end of it, when you're finally constructed the Millennium Falcon, you're given 2 small minifigures to play with. 2 little human people. Ooh, I am your father, Luke. No, you know. But you know, you spent your entire week building the model, right? Constructing. Playmobil is different. And I'm in Germany, so I'm selling this German product, of course. But you buy a set of Playmobil, and what do? You have to click hair onto the person, and maybe click a couple of things into place, and you have a street or a home, and instantly you have nothing else to do. That took you 5 minutes. So what do? You have all the figures, and you start playing, you know, human fantasy games. Oh, let's go shopping. You know, it's a whole different kind of game. The process to the human play is much quicker than it is with Lego. So I just think generally the point here is that maybe we need a little bit less Lego in the way that we design our cities and a lot more Playmobil. It is, however, incredibly important that we listen also to the thoughts and observations of the greatest minds in the field when we're thinking about how to remaster our cities. People like Lulu Sofia, She's 5 now. This is my daughter. But I've been recording her urban observations for over 2 years now. It all started 2 years ago on a trip to the hardware store on our cargo bike, as we do in Copenhagen. And we stopped at a red light, and we were just sitting there, on the bikes, and she looked over and she saw the most amazing thing. She said, "Daddy, look, it's a motorbike with 2 people on it." Simple observation, but she was 3.5, so she had never considered this concept that 2 people could be on a motorbike. It was absolutely, it was like amazing, like she saw Mickey Mouse walking down the street. And I said, well, cool, maybe they're friends, it's nice to ride a motorbike together, they can talk and stuff. Well, hey, look at you and me, we're 2 people on a bike, we're friends, we're talking. She was amazed. Off we went. We stopped at a red light further along, and I realized in retrospect that she had been intensely observing her urban theater, looking for other examples of 2 people doing this, 2 people doing that. We get to this other red light, and she says, "Daddy," she was disappointed and frustrated. She said, "Daddy, cars are silly." And I said, "Okay, why? Why are cars silly?" And she says, "Because you can't see the people in them." She couldn't see if there's 1, 2, 3 people inside these cars. And a 3.5-year-old who has no relationship with cars, coming at it from a pure angle, she nailed it. The social exclusion of car culture, the anonymity of automobiles. It was brilliant, and it was simple, and it was logical. Sophia has a constant repertoire of nuggets of urbanist wisdom, and I write them all down. But a couple of months ago, she took it to the next level. We were just walking through our neighborhood, waiting across the street, and we were a bit quiet at that moment, and she just suddenly looks at me and she says, "Daddy, when will my city fit me?" She's like 5, but this is like a couple months ago. She's 5 years old, and she's standing next to a garbage can that's bigger than her. She spends her whole day walking along, looking at people, grown-ups' asses, buildings are like the Grand Canyon. She was just wondering, is my city ever going to fit me? And I said, well, of course it will. You'll grow, and and then you'll be bigger. And she's going, okay. She understood that logic, but it was a brilliant observation, and it really made me think. That's the great thing about all this, is it really made me think. Does my city fit me? There are places in Copenhagen that do. The world's busiest bicycle street, crossing Queen Louise's Bridge in the heart of the city, on cycle tracks 5 meters wide on both sides of the street, a narrow 2-way streets for cars, and wide sidewalks. I feel like my city fits me at that spot. In the medieval city center, like all medieval city centers, I feel like my city fits me there. Then there's, in Copenhagen and in Munich and everywhere else, there are places that don't. Hans Christian Andersen Boulevard is this vast expanse of political and engineering arrogance with 8 lanes of car traffic slicing through the heart of a Nordic capital. There's even outside my own flat, where my city allows 26,000 cars to pass my windows every day. I don't feel like my city fits me. I don't feel at scale on the urban landscape on these locations. But Lulu has inspired a new way of thinking for me and our company. We talk about it all the time. We're starting to call it the life-size city as a goal in our work when we're working with other cities. How do you make this street life-size? How do you create generally the life-size city? It's a lovely idea, and it's a great goal to work towards. Now, you met Felix. I know parents who talk about how great their kids are really boring, but bear with me. Felix is 11 now, and last year I got his 3rd grade class to redesign the roundabout outside their school, a roundabout they use several times a day in our densely populated neighborhood. I went into the classroom, arranged it with the teacher, and I gave them the challenge. I said, redesign this roundabout, make it safer for cyclists and pedestrians, and while you're at it, if you can get people to get out of their cars and to use other forms of transport, that'll be nice too. I didn't tell them anything about urban planning. I didn't want to lead them down the path. I wanted them to find the path themselves. And off I went, and it was brilliant. They really took the challenge seriously. They divided up into teams. They went out and did site visits at this intersection, talking, making drawings about it. They went back into the class to discuss and they ended up making a fantastic model of this entire intersection. It was a joy to be part of this process. I forgot that slide. So let me tell you that some of the ideas that they came up with were very, already super interesting. There's one kid called Malte, and he says, if we want people to get out of cars, why don't we just make cars uglier? Because then nobody will want to drive them. Doesn't that make it completely logical? But they found out that the optimal speed limit by their school should be 15 kilometers per hour. Nobody told them anything about speed limits. They figured it out themselves. They said we should have a fence between the cycle tracks and the car lanes, or they should have light signals at this intersection instead of the traditional roundabout. One-way streets for cars, but not for everybody else. speed bumps everywhere. They also said that they wanted glass roofs on all of the streets and sidewalks in the entire city they lived in, so they never ever got wet in the rain again or the snow. So, you know, I can understand that, absolutely. But all of their work was based on rationality, logic, human experience, desire lines, and human need. I'm screwing up here. Great. Children are the future, of course, but I've realized that adopting their pure rational thought can very well be the future of planning in our cities. Thinking like these children do frees our minds. It provides us with a way out of the matrix. Now, last but not least, I want to introduce you to a guy called William. William is a major influence on the way we work at our company and the way that we think. And he comes into the conversation several times a week and helps us cut through the crap and find the core in everything we do. He's one of the greatest bicycle and pedestrian planners in history, but he doesn't know that because he died in 1347, so he's never going to figure that out. His name is William of Ockham, and the principle called Occam's razor is attributed to him. It's used in mathematics and science, but it's brilliant when you apply it to urban planning and to really any aspect of sales and marketing and everything else. It's simply that the simplest solution is usually better than the more complex one. If you choose the most simple solution really in anything, you'll probably have chosen the best one for whatever it is you're doing. And thinking like this gives you fantastic clarity. It helps you present, design 4 types of bicycle infrastructure in the entire country of Denmark. It helps you really cut through to the core. So all of this begs the question, what would our streets look like if our main consultants were 5-year-olds, 3rd graders, teams of young design students, and some 13th century religious dude? I think that they would be beautiful. They would work just as good as they're working now, probably even better. More importantly, they would be safer than at any time, at any single point in the last 100 years. They would be rational streets designed based on the desire and mobility patterns of the citizens, just as they were for 7,000 years before we screwed up. We have the tools, and I just think that it's time for us to be rational again. I don't usually have to talk at many conferences about the health benefits of cycling, the societal benefits of increasing cycling traffic. But when I started Copenhagenites.com in 2007, I was this lone voice talking about urban cycling instead of all the other sports and recreations. Now there's a choir out there on the internet, and it's really inspiring. But I like to chuck a couple of statistics out there. The cycling citizens of Copenhagen contribute 233 million euros a year to the health savings for the city of Copenhagen, just by rolling off to the work, or the supermarket at 15 kilometers per hour. It's easy money to be made for cities. We know in Denmark that for every kilometer cycled, we get to put 23 euro cents in our pocket, pure profit. For every kilometer driven by car, we pay out 16 cents. We throw 16 cents into a big black infrastructure hole and we never ever see it again. William of Ockham would say, if he had to make the choice, choose the bicycle for transport. The great thing about what I do is I'm talking about Copenhagen, blah, 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 blah. Copenhagen, Amsterdam, many of you are probably tired of hearing about this, which is great because, it's time for other cities to step up to the plate now. Munich is a great example. But it's not just about Copenhagen and Amsterdam anymore. We did the Copenhagenites Index every 2 years, and you can see Munich is number 13 on the list of the world's most bicycle-friendly cities. But look at a lot of the names on this, of city names on this list. There's about 7 of them where there were no bicycles 5 or 6 years ago. There were no bicycles left in Barcelona, in Paris, in Dublin, in Budapest, and now these are well on their way to becoming very bicycle-friendly cities. People are taking it seriously. And this quote is my favorite quote of the last year. This is Bertrand Delanoë, where he said, "The fact is that automobiles no longer have a place in the big cities of our times." This is the mayor of Paris, not the mayor of some unpronounceable Dutch or Danish town. This is, when you got people like that saying stuff like that, you have a reason to be optimistic about the future of our cities. The mayor of New York says the same thing, and there's a mayor in Montreal, in Dublin. They're all talking the same kind of talk. At the end of the day, it's not about the bicycle. That's what Fozzie also said at the beginning. It's not about the bicycle. It's not about sustainability, livable cities, traffic calming. It's all of these different words that we use. Now, the main monument in Copenhagen, I think, is rather pathetic. You know her, the Little Mermaid, this little naked green woman sitting on a rock in the harbor, right? A fantastic fairy tale, but it's really an inappropriate, I think, monument for a city as cool as Copenhagen. So I think the greatest monument that we have ever created in the history of Denmark is the bicycle infrastructure network and our desire for a livable city. And we see monuments like this. All these other cities that are now, taking up the challenge. Monuments are rising around the world in this new century. This new paradigm is starting to shift. These monuments are erected to the past, the present, and the future. Monuments that save lives instead of destroying them or wiping them out. And the greatest thing about everybody in this room and everybody that we know in the cities that we live in